All right, our final topic this week. We wanted to talk. It was an interesting piece in Esquire this past week, and it talked about. It was actually from an author who spoke on their own experience, growing up, '80s, '90s, and spoke about the misogyny in hip hop and rap lyrics. And then also how their own development as a person, how they received that when they were younger, how they receive it now, and how that affects them, and how that's something that is not something as of now, at least as an adult, that sits well with them, but they didn't really question it, when they were younger. And so it got us thinking. I mean, you and I are both in our 40s, and so I've grown up in many respects with rap music, and people talk about the misogyny. I've always talked about the misogyny in rap music, or at least for the last 30 plus years. And so what do you think as far as, either your own personal journey with it, or just the complexity that it introduces in terms of being able to enjoy rap music with the levels of misogyny that you see in rap and in the lyrics?
Yeah, I think it was a great article and it's kind of a great topic to be addressed, I think, not only for hip hop fans, but I think for all of us, because it's not just hip hop. I started thinking about things like Call of Duty, the video game. That I like to play still at my age of 46. And I've been playing that game for 20 years, but I don't walk around shooting people, right? And so it was kind of this greater idea, like, it's interesting. How can we, in one way, we're entertained by certain things that do clearly have a negative kind of cultural and social connotation. And some of us may play that out in our real life, but many of us don't. And so it's the idea of this compartmentalization that comes in. And the other thing that I found interesting about the article, because it seems like it's in trying to figure out this person's age, I think they're about 3-4 years older than me. So when they talked about listening to like NWA's original album or Too Short stuff from the late 80s, and the way they talked about women, I can remember being a young person, 10, 11 years old, hearing those lyrics as well. And just like you said, I didn't really understand it. But it's the same thing. You grow up immersed in this stuff, but yet how is it that we recognize it? And even for me, I didn't carry out those behaviors in terms of the misogynistic way, just like I didn't carry out becoming a gangbanger either when I listened to a lot of rap that had, stuff promoting gangster activity. So yeah, to me, it was a great article and something that I think most of us, I would say this, I'm sure most people that have listened to rap and played these violent video games or watched violent action movies from Hollywood, most of us have not carried out those. We haven't followed those through in real life, or else the country would be a lot more dangerous than it currently is. So it's an interesting conversation about the ability to compartmentalize something that you've been immersed in.
The idea that it almost like we can compartmentalize, I think it's an interesting concept as an adult. Like this person to me reflects kind of the differences in an adult thinking versus a child thinking. As a child thinking, you might not really appreciate what's being said. As an adult, you do appreciate it. And you actually have to, generally speaking, if you don't want to live like that, if that's not how you see yourself, then you have to compartmentalize it, and so compartmentalizing though takes energy. That takes effort. That's not something that is just automatically happens. So you become acutely aware of it. I say all that to say that I feel like, generally speaking, society has a pretty good handle on that, which surprises me, honestly. Like, I feel like, as you pointed out, forget the violence part. We would live in a very different society if everybody was out there trying to live out rap lyrics, and like from the misogynistic standpoint, like, so at least more so than they already do. Like, these type of behaviors didn't commence once people started rapping about it. And in fact, what it suggests is that rappers see this stuff and then rapped about it, and it broadcasts it. The question of whether it makes it more prevalent, I think, is that's chicken and egg stuff. I don't know, and I don't think it's knowable whether this stuff now whether it could spread it to other cultures is a whole other thing. But within the culture that it's coming from, does it make it more prevalent? I don't know. Ultimately, it's one of these kind of mental exercises I don't think that really has an answer. I appreciate the guy for bringing it up, though, because it is good every now and again to kind of consider what you're putting into your head and how is that affecting you, or is that affecting you? Are you compartmentalizing completely? Are you treating people a certain way because you're immersing yourself in a certain thing? But again, the misogyny in America, it would be impossible to separate out the misogyny in American culture and say, oh, okay, well, this part comes from hip hop, this part comes from the movies, this part, like, it's just because it's just so present in general that, it's no surprise, honestly, that part of the arts would be pushing this stuff. And again, and even with music, it's not just rap music that you hear that type of, that type of stuff going on. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think if you look at rap began in the early 70s and didn't gain prominence nationally until the 1980s. If you've, anyone out there listening or watching ever read or heard about the book Iceberg Slim, there's things like pimping and all that was going on heavily in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. So you didn't need rap music just for misogynistic
prostitution
behaviors.
is considered the oldest profession.
Yeah. No, I just mean, kind of the way that people talk in rap lyrics, and I mean things like, heroin use and cocaine use. I mean, that's been going on since the 20s. So even Malcolm X's biography was a great example when he was running numbers, just about kind of the street mentality back prior to rap, in decades prior. So like that's all I'm saying is that,
like the urban.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of inner city stuff. And that's been going on really since they started shoving people in the ghettos in the city.
Like I use the word urban not to kind of kind of insinuate, but just meaning like that distinguishes that's a distinguishing point. You can't talk about urban stuff 400 years ago because it just wasn't like this urban kind of culture is a relatively new environment, or urban environment is a relatively new environment. And so we can talk about kind of what's happening from a societal standpoint in that, but it's something that's relatively new in terms of human experience.
A lot of that has been mirrored, something I wanted to address for the end part of our discussion, but it's mirrored in other urban societies. So I'm thinking as you're talking, I recently read something about streetwalkers in London in the 1800s. It was talking about Jack the Ripper, and he preyed on the prostitutes. And it's the same thing. It was like they were the bottom of society. There was a lot of bad stuff going on, just in the dredges of the London kind of underground. And so it's not... in America, it's blacks that were put into the inner cities of northern and Midwestern cities. So culturally, we think of urban as kind of that look. But if you look at anywhere in the world,
you go to China and you got drug use in the cities, and you got prostitutions in the cities, all that. Yeah.
And so that's that. And I think that the other thing in just going back to some of the stuff regarding the misogynistic nature of hip hop itself is, this is where I do think there's a little bit, of everyone. There's good points in various ideologies. So one of the kind of traditional conservative ideologies is things like family values. And I can think of, okay, well, why didn't I turn out like one of these rappers when I was so influenced from such a young age and listening and pumping this stuff in my ears and headphones every day in high school and all that stuff? Is why? Because I had a great relationship with my mom. I had a great mom, great grandma. Like the women in my life personally taught me a different way to behave to women. And so it was not unrealistic in my mind to think of the hip hop as something that was more like entertainment and a fantasy versus something that was a blueprint for me to follow in my real life. And I think maybe if
a place to find fulfillment as well.
Yeah, because maybe if another young man didn't have those positive female role models in their life early on, they could be more easily swayed to go in that direction. So, I think there's a little bit of all that stuff when you look at all the ingredients that go into why we behave certain ways, if being influenced by other things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, your own personal environment will matter as far as how much this kind of stuff will influence you, especially when you're young. Again, before you have kind of that separate awareness of, okay, wow, this stuff can affect the way I think about stuff. But the other thing about this to me that really stands out is this is something that has been observed in hip hop as well. It's just the nature of what's popular. The misogynistic stuff oftentimes can be very popular. Also, the dominant masculinity stuff is something that's very popular. So I wonder with that, like, is it those things? Is it those themes about that music that makes it more popular? It would seem to be that it was, because I know when we were younger, it was like the conscious rap, and the conscious rap was never as popular as the the trifling rap, and so So I do think that part of it as humans, whether we're conscious of it or not, is that part of it, we have to be recognizing this stuff as entertainment, and want that kind of edgy stuff. I mean, and so probably it's good that it's seen as edgy. It's not seen as the fact that it's in this music doesn't make it seem like it's normalized, at least for most people. Some people it does, like you said, depending on your own family environment and influence and where you're drawing your own sense of self-worth from. That at the same time, though, it probably still is something that we need to be aware of in terms of like how this could be influencing youth in society. That's not saying you ban it, but that's just saying that, kind of to your example, we make sure that there's support systems in place, that this isn't the only place where people learn or are exposed to cultural values and so forth. Like you try to just make sure that there's broad messaging going on and not just the messaging that is the most popular, which will oftentimes be, I know I distinguished violence before, but the stuff that's the most popular is oftentimes the most violent, the most misogynistic, and different things like that. Because I think, again, part of us understands that they want the entertainment, or we want the entertainment to be a little edgy. And so we got to counter, but we had to be aware of that and counterbalance that in some way.
Well, that's why action movies exist and why, Pornhub
not just exist, but those are oftentimes the biggest blockbusters,
Yeah, no, but think about the Pornhub and YouPorn get more traffic in a day than like Google does in a week. You know what I mean? Like it's. I think you're right. There's a part of us that don't want to acknowledge that there's an underbelly to all of us that will get attracted to something that's a little bit edgy, right? And for some people it could be violence, for some people it's sex, for some people it's drugs. It's just and all that, and so. And
well,
the
at
last
least
thing,
most of us. Oh, yeah, but go ahead. Because one of the things that, just real quick, one of the things that always, I think that everybody has different needs as far as how much stimulation and edginess. And so it's always been interesting to me that a lot of times people who are probably on the lower end of how much stimulation and edginess they need are usually the ones trying to make the rules for everyone else. Like, I don't see why you guys need all this. It's like, it's because you don't see it. You don't feel it. Like,
it could be them, or the other part of that is the ones who are really doing that stuff, but they don't want anyone to know. So I'm thinking about like that couple that ran the Moms for Liberty here in Florida. That ends up, they're having threesomes, having gay sex. It's like, come on, like seriously. So,
and y'all are the ones telling everybody else.
Exactly. Telling what to do. Yeah.
But no, I think from there we can wrap this topic up and wrap the show up. So we appreciate everybody for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Until next time, I'm James Keys.
I am Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk to you next time.